Now to New Jersey, where as the Bridgegate trial wraps up its first week, there is now talk of a move to impeach Governor Christie. First, let's get the latest from the courthouse, where for the first time today, jurors heard from David Wildstein, not the former Christie ally who has already pleaded guilty in the case and is now a cooperating witness with the feds. Here's Files One's news reporter Kimberly Walls.
David Wildstein testifying under a plea agreement with the government against defendant Bill Baroni, who he calls, quote, one of the closest friends I ever had, end quote. The former senior official at the Port Authority saying under oath, quote, the Port Authority was asked to play a role in helping the governor's office secure certain endorsements, end quote. He said the request came from both Kelly and Governor Christie. He went on to say World Trade Center construction site tours and even the steel and flags from the Ground Zero site were used to garner support from those Democrats.
Everything used as a tool for the constituency of one. Whether the governor knew before, during, or after is almost irrelevant. The governor set this atmosphere, Governor Christie, and that's what he's responsible for.
Wildstein answering questions from prosecution on defendant Bridgegate Kelly, saying, quote, all use of Port Authority resources had to be approved by the governor's office, end quote, meaning Kelly.
Absolutely not. The man did not answer to Bridget Kelly, and we'll establish that without a doubt once we cross-examine him.
Wildstein also testifying his former boss at the Port Authority, defendant Bill Baroni, referred to Governor Christie as Constituent 1, meaning the only constituent they needed to serve.
It's been a great first week for Bill. So we'll see everybody next week, and it'll continue.
And we expect to learn a lot more about how the GWB lane closure scandal was conspired when David Wildstein returns to the witness stand on Monday. For RFL, I'm Kimberly Wallace.
And while we wait for the trial and the jury's verdict many weeks from now, the verdict appears to be in when it comes to lawmakers and how they feel about the chief executive. WNBC is reporting that at least one legislative committee chairman is pushing to impeach Governor Christie, saying odds 50-50 they will, and that it's up to Assembly Speaker Vincent Prieto to decide whether or not to pursue impeachment. Now, the report stating that members believe the Bridgegate trial shows, quote, the Republican governor had more knowledge of the lane closures in Fort Lee during and after the week of 2013 than he has led the public to believe. And also that the obvious charge behind any impeachment proceeding would focus on obstruction of justice. Now, for more, I spoke with Assemblyman John Wisniewski, who is the co-chair of that special committee formed to investigate Bridgegate. Well, first here, help us separate what is rhetoric and what's reality. Is it true that there has been within the Assembly research into whether or not to bring impeachment articles against the governor?
There's a lot of talk about that. It's based on the fact that the U.S. Attorney at their opening statements on Monday made reference to the fact that they will prove that the governor knew on September 11th about the lane closures while they were happening. What we have not seen is exactly what evidence will be put on to prove that. We've heard that David Wildstein said years ago that evidence existed that the governor knew, but we never quite found out what that evidence was. And so before we start engaging in the speculation about the legislature moving forward with articles of impeachment, I think it would be more practical to understand exactly what evidence will be put on a trial. Is it something that we haven't seen before? Is it something more probative of what we've already heard? And then make a decision about whether or not to go forward.
All right, I'll get back to the trial that's going on in a moment. But first, have you heard enough already that you want to put the governor under oath and subpoena him and ask him directly if he knew or not from the legislative level?
Well, I believe that there is a mission for the Legislative Investigative Committee to pick up where it left off and move forward. There were unanswered questions when we went on hiatus, and since then we've learned so many more interesting facts, such as the text message by Christina Renna exclaiming that the governor lied when he was making his press statement that he knew nothing about the lane closures. People like Christina Renna and others would be valuable individuals to come before the committee to ask further questions. And to your point, would we like to ask the governor what he knew and when he knew it? Absolutely. But again, we're getting ahead of ourselves. I think what we need to do is see how this trial plays out and what evidence comes out and what actions the U.S. Attorney's Office takes as a result. But I do think that there is work for the committee to do, because what Mr. Fishman, what the U.S. Attorney's Office is looking for are criminal prosecutions, which is very different than what a legislative committee is looking for. We're looking for the facts so we can legislate that this may not happen again.
Okay, but give me an idea, given in the opening statements on day one of this trial, the prosecution laid out that they would prove that Governor Christie knew about the lane closures as they were happening. You know this case better than anybody. What would you need to hear to say all of a sudden, okay, I've heard enough. Now we're going to consider it would be impeachment or subpoenaing the governor. What are you waiting to hear at trial to basically prove the prosecution's point that Christie knew what was going on and in effect lied to you guys?
Well, I mean, that question asks a lot of speculation. The U.S. Attorney's Office said they're going to establish for the jury that the governor knew. Do they do that by showing the photograph of David Wildstein, Bill Baroni, and the governor talking before the 9/11 service? Or do they have an email? Or better yet, do they have a third party that was in a conversation? Do they have a text message from the governor himself? I think all of those things create varying degrees of certainty about what the governor knew and when he knew it. But I think it would be not responsible to start speculating about what may come from the U.S. Attorney's proofs. We haven't seen them all, and then jumping to conclusions about what we would do with those proofs. Clearly, if there is credible, reliable evidence, more than we already know, that the governor deliberately misrepresented what he knew, in my opinion, that amounts to obstruction of justice, which is a very serious issue. We don't have all of those facts. Let's wait till those facts come out. We've got David Wildstein testifying today at the U.S. courthouse, likely to continue into Monday. That will reveal perhaps some of this. There'll be many other witnesses. Remember, this trial is scheduled to last somewhere between 6 and 8 weeks. We're barely finishing week 1. So there's a lot more that will come out. And don't forget also that the defense attorneys will be putting on a version of the facts that will differ in degree from what the U.S. Attorney's Office puts on. And we'll have to reconcile those two to see exactly where the truth lies.
Fair enough. Finally, I'll just get your sense about the legislature right now. It's more specifically your colleagues in the Assembly. WNBC is reporting that a legislator told them that it was 50-50. They would pursue articles of impeachment. You believe, while possibly premature, you have a temperature of where the Assembly is right now. Is there a division within the Assembly? Some want to move forward right now on the governor? Or is everybody taking your cautious wait-and-see approach?
I think that, look, if a piece of legislation were put up today, articles of impeachment, it probably would pass. That being said, we're talking in a vacuum without having all of the facts in front of us. I think a lot of legislators would like to see what the details are. I do believe that there are a number of legislators who are very frustrated about how this administration and this governor in particular has treated the legislature and how he has treated the state. And so obviously there's an interest in finding out exactly what the governor knew and when he knew it. Did he obstruct justice? Did he participate in a cover-up? Was he trying to cover his own tracks? Was he trying to assist Bill Baroni and others in covering this up? We don't know. Those are all legitimate questions that may be answered by trial, may be answered in other ways. But certainly the fact that the U.S. Attorney has made the statement in opening that the governor knew, and the fact that the defense counsel have essentially corroborated that, although in a different degree, you've got all of these parties who disagree so fundamentally on the outcome of the trial, but they all agree on one thing, that the governor and the governor's office had involvement in this. Leads a lot of people to say that this is unacceptable, that this is an abuse of the governor's power, that this is abuse of the trust placed in him by the people of the state of New Jersey. For him to mock and ridicule those people who were investigating this, for him to roundly deny it when there are people saying he actually knew, not only is wrong, it might be a violation of law, but what it does more fundamentally, it undermines the credibility that the office of the governor has. It undermines the trust that people have in government in the state of New Jersey, that it's being executed for the right reasons. They see a case like this, and they can't help but shake their heads and wonder if everything is done for the same petty political reasons.
As the U.S. Attorney across the river says, stay tuned, Assemblyman. I certainly appreciate the time.
Thank you very much.
A story to keep an eye on. All right, coming up next. It is the final weekend before one of the most anticipated presidential debates, I think, of all time here, and it's going to be in our backyard. So what should we expect from the candidates come Monday night? And will picking on the moderator actually help Trump? Stay with us.